Hey family. Just wanted to take a moment to say a massive thank you from the bottom of my heart. Your comments, support, and loyalty mean absolutely everything to me. I see you showing up video after video, sharing your thoughts, and making this community what it is. This channel wouldn't be the same without each and every one of you. Your enthusiasm keeps me motivated, and I'm so grateful you've chosen to spend your time here. Much love to you all. Red Heart. The tiny hand reached out from the blue blanket, grabbing the gold watch on his wrist as their eyes met for the first time in 2 years. Thomas stood frozen at the bus stop, rain pouring down around them as his former girlfriend Claire held a baby he never knew existed. The child, with eyes exactly like his own, stared up at him with a curious gaze that seemed to know everything. In that moment, the billion-dollar empire he had built since their breakup felt worthless compared to what stood before him. The possibility that he had a child he never knew about. A child who was now 6 months old, according to his quick mental calculation of when they had last been together. Thomas? Claire's voice was barely audible above the rain hitting the shelter roof. She looked different, tired, with shadows under her eyes, but still beautiful. Her hair was shorter now, and she wore simple clothes instead of the designer outfits he once bought her. The baby in her arms cooed and reached for him again. Is this? The words stuck in his throat as his heart hammered against his ribs. 2 years ago, he had been so focused on building his tech company that he had pushed her away, convinced that love was a distraction he couldn't afford. Now, standing at this random bus stop where he'd only pulled over because his sports car had gotten a flat tire, fate seemed to be laughing at him. Claire clutched the baby tighter, her knuckles turning white. You should go, Thomas. Your life is different now. I've seen you on magazine covers, dating models, building skyscrapers. But Thomas couldn't move. The rain soaked through his $1,000 suit as he stepped closer, out from under the shelter. Please, he said, his voice breaking. Tell me the truth. The bus rounded the corner, its headlights cutting through the gray afternoon. Claire shifted the baby to her other arm and picked up a worn duffel bag. This is Emma. And yes, she's your daughter. Thomas felt the ground shift beneath him. A daughter. He had a daughter. And he had missed the first 6 months of her life because of his stupid pride and ambition. Where are you going? He asked as Claire stepped toward the approaching bus. We're moving to my sister's place. I lost my job last month. The apartment got too expensive. She wouldn't meet his eyes. Without thinking, Thomas reached for the duffel bag. Let me help. Please. We don't need your money, Claire said firmly, but he could see the exhaustion in her eyes. It's not about money, Thomas replied, though that wasn't entirely true. Of course it was partly about money, he had so much of it now while she was struggling. But it was about so much more. It's about time. I've already lost 6 months. The bus doors opened with a hiss. The driver looked at them impatiently. You coming or not, lady? He called. Claire hesitated, looking from the bus to Thomas, who stood in the rain, water dripping from his expensive haircut, his eyes fixed on the baby, on Emma, who was now reaching for him again with tiny, determined fingers. We can take my car, Thomas said. Once the tow truck fixes the tire. Or I can call my driver. Whatever you want. Just, please don't get on that bus. Not yet. Let's talk. The bus driver sighed loudly. I got a schedule to keep. Claire took a deep breath. We'll wait for the next one, she told the driver, who shrugged and closed the doors. As the bus pulled away, Thomas and Claire stood under the shelter, 3 feet of space and 2 years of silence between them. Emma babbled happily, unaware of the tension. She has your eyes, Claire finally said. Thomas swallowed hard. May I? He asked, holding out his arms tentatively. After a moment's hesitation, Claire carefully transferred the baby to him. Emma felt impossibly light in his arms, and yet somehow like the most important thing he had ever held. She looked up at him and Thomas felt something crack open inside his chest. Hello, Emma, he whispered. I'm your dad. The word, dad, felt foreign on his tongue. His own father had been cold and distant, leaving his mother to raise him alone after walking out when Thomas was 10. He had promised himself he would never be that man, and then he had unknowingly become something possibly worse, absent entirely. I didn't know, he said, looking up at Claire. I swear I didn't know. I tried to tell you, she replied, her voice steady but sad. I called your office dozens of times after I found out. Your assistant always said you were too busy. I sent emails, letters. After a while, I got the message. Thomas closed his eyes briefly, remembering how he had instructed his team to filter out anything personal during the critical months when his company was going public. He had been so focused on success that he had shut out everything else. I'm so sorry, he said, knowing the words were completely inadequate. It's in the past now, Claire replied, though her tone suggested the wound was still fresh. We've managed fine. Thomas looked at her threadbare coat, the worn duffel bag, and thought about her lost job and apartment. They had not managed fine at all, and it was his fault. Claire, please. Let me be part of her life. Let me help. Emma chose that moment to grab his tie and stuff it in her mouth, making both adults laugh despite themselves. She likes expensive things, Claire said with a small smile. Maybe she is your daughter after all. A sleek black car pulled up to the curb and a man in a uniform stepped out. Mr. Reynolds? The tow service called us about your vehicle. I brought the spare car as requested. Thomas looked at the luxury sedan, then back at Claire and Emma. Can we go somewhere to talk? Please? Just for a little while. Claire hesitated, then nodded slowly. Just to talk, she agreed. As Thomas helped Claire and Emma into the back seat of the car, he felt something he hadn't experienced in years: fear. Not the fear of failure that had driven him to build his empire, but the fear of losing something truly precious before he'd even had the chance to know it. He had spent 2 years becoming one of the richest men in the country. Now, standing in the rain at a bus stop he'd never meant to visit, fate had shown him how poor he truly was. Where to, sir? The driver asked. Thomas looked at Claire. It's your call. After a moment she said, there's a coffee shop called Maggie's 3 blocks from here. We can talk there. As the car pulled away from the curb, Thomas kept his eyes on Emma, who had fallen asleep against Claire's chest. His daughter. The words still didn't seem real. I want to know everything, he said quietly. Everything I've missed. Claire looked out the window at the passing city. 6 months is a lot to catch up on. I know, Thomas replied. But I want to try. The rain continued to fall as the car glided through the streets, carrying them toward a conversation that would change all their lives forever. Maggie's coffee shop was nearly empty when they arrived. A bell jingled above the door as Thomas held it open for Claire, who carried Emma against her shoulder. The baby was still sleeping, her tiny face peaceful despite the tension between her parents. They chose a booth in the back corner, away from the windows and the few other customers. Thomas ordered coffees while Claire settled Emma into her lap, carefully unwrapping the blue blanket to reveal a simple yellow onesie underneath. She's beautiful, Thomas said, unable to take his eyes off the child. Claire's expression softened slightly. She is. She hardly ever cries. The doctor says she's perfectly healthy. The doctor. Thomas began, then stopped, the reality hitting him anew. Healthcare, checkups, vaccines, all the expenses Claire had shouldered alone. I want to know about everything. The pregnancy, the birth, these first months. If you're willing to tell me. The server brought their coffees, and Claire waited until she was gone before speaking. I found out I was pregnant about 3 weeks after we broke up, she said, her fingers tracing the rim of her mug. I was shocked. We had always been careful. Except that last night, Thomas said quietly, remembering. The night before their final argument, they had been celebrating the preliminary approval of his company's first major patent. They had drunk champagne in his apartment, made love with an intensity that seemed to bridge the growing distance between them. Neither had thought about protection in the heat of the moment. Claire nodded. I tried to reach you as soon as I knew. Like I said, your staff blocked me at every turn. After 2 months of trying, I gave up. Did you consider? He couldn't finish the question. Not seriously, Claire replied honestly. I wanted her from the moment I knew about her. I had enough savings at first. My job at the gallery was going well. My landlord was understanding about letting me stay in my apartment with a baby. She took a sip of coffee. Things only got difficult recently when the gallery closed. Thomas felt a wave of shame wash over him. While he had been making millions, buying penthouses and sports cars, Claire had been struggling to keep a roof over their daughter's head. I saw you in the news sometimes, Claire continued. The IPO. The new headquarters downtown. Dating that actress. Jennifer, Thomas supplied, though the relationship felt like it had happened in another lifetime. It didn't last. None of them did. I'm not asking for explanations about your love life, Claire said firmly. That's not why we're talking. I know, Thomas replied. I want you to know that there hasn't been anyone serious. Not since you. Claire looked away. That's not relevant anymore. Emma stirred in her sleep, making little snuffling noises. Both parents watched her for a moment, their coffee cooling between them. Why now? Thomas finally asked. Why were you at that bus stop today? Were you leaving the city? Claire sighed. My sister lives in Bridgeport. She has a spare room. She said Emma and I could stay until I find another job. She hesitated, then added, I wasn't running away from you if that's what you're asking. You weren't a factor in the decision because you weren't a factor in our lives. The words stung, but Thomas knew he deserved them. And now, he asked, now that we've met again? What happens? I don't know, Claire admitted. I never planned for this. Let me help, Thomas said, leaning forward. Not just with money, although of course I want to provide for Emma financially. But let me be her father. Please. Claire studied him, her expression guarded. Being a father isn't something you can schedule between business meetings, Thomas. It's full-time. It's exhausting and messy and completely unpredictable. I know I have a lot to learn, he acknowledged. But I want to try. I'll make time. I'll change whatever I need to change. People don't change that easily, Claire said, but there was a question in her eyes. Sometimes they do, Thomas replied. Sometimes they just need the right reason. Emma chose that moment to wake up, her eyes blinking open slowly. She looked around the unfamiliar coffee shop with interest, then spotted Thomas. To his surprise, she smiled and reached for him across the table. She likes you, Claire said, sounding slightly surprised. She's usually shy with strangers. Maybe she knows, Thomas suggested softly. On some level. Claire didn't answer, but she didn't object when Thomas carefully took Emma from her arms. The baby settled against his chest as if she belonged there, playing with his tie again. I have a proposal, Thomas said after a moment. Not a permanent solution, just a starting point. Come stay at my guest house. It's completely separate from the main house, so you'd have your privacy. Take some time to figure out your next steps without the pressure of finding a job immediately. Let me get to know Emma. Let her get to know me. Claire frowned. I don't want to be your charity case, Thomas. It's not charity when it's family, he replied. And like it or not, we are family now. The three of us. The word hung between them, fragile and new. Just think about it, Thomas continued when Claire didn't respond. The guest house has 2 bedrooms, a full kitchen. It's on the other side of the garden from the main house. You'd be doing me a favor, really? Giving me a chance. A chance you didn't give me when I tried to tell you about the pregnancy, Claire pointed out, but her tone had lost some of its edge. I know, Thomas said, meeting her gaze. And I'll regret that for the rest of my life. But I'm here now, asking for a second chance. Not necessarily with you, although I've never stopped caring about you, but definitely with Emma. Claire watched as their daughter tugged on Thomas's tie, completely comfortable in her father's arms despite having just met him. After a long moment, she sighed. 1 week, she said. We'll stay for 1 week. Just to figure things out. No promises beyond that. Thomas felt a surge of hope. 1 week is a start. And I'll need to find a job, Claire added firmly. I'm not going to live off your money indefinitely. Of course, Thomas agreed, though privately he was already thinking of ways to help her find the perfect position, perhaps even within his own company if she was interested. But he knew better than to suggest that now. Claire had always valued her independence. When would you like to move in? He asked instead. Claire gestured toward her duffel bag. This is everything we have left. My furniture is in storage, but that's being cleared out tomorrow because I couldn't pay the fee. Thomas nodded, understanding the urgency of her situation. Then today if that works for you. My driver can take us there now, and I'll arrange for someone to pick up your things from storage tomorrow. For the first time, Claire looked truly relieved. Thank you, she said softly. No, Thomas replied, looking down at Emma, who had fallen asleep again in his arms. Thank you for giving me this chance, and for taking such good care of our daughter when I couldn't. As they left the coffee shop and stepped back into the rain, Thomas held his jacket over Emma to keep her dry. His mind was already racing with plans, converting one of the guest house bedrooms into a proper nursery, hiring the best pediatrician in the city, setting up a trust fund for Emma's future. But more than that, he was thinking about the changes he would need to make in his own life. The meetings he would reschedule, the business trips he would delegate to others, the priorities he would need to re-examine. For 2 years, his company had been his baby. Now, looking down at the actual baby sleeping in his arms, Thomas realized how skewed his perspective had been. As the car pulled away from the curb, he made a silent promise to Emma. He would be the father she deserved, not the one he had had. Even if it meant letting go of everything else he had built. 1 week might not seem like much time to prove himself, but it was a start. And Thomas Reynolds had built an empire from much less. The drive to Thomas's estate took 40 minutes, leaving the busy downtown area for the exclusive hillside neighborhood where many of the city's wealthiest residents lived. As they passed through the tall iron gates and up the winding driveway, Claire stared out the window with wide eyes. "You live here? Alone?" she asked, taking in the sprawling property with its manicured gardens and the large main house perched at the top of the hill. Thomas shifted Emma gently in his arms. She had slept through most of the drive. "It's too big for one person," he admitted. "I bought it when the company went public. I thought, well, I'm not sure what I thought. That bigger was better, I guess." The car continued past the main house and around a curve in the driveway, stopping in front of a smaller but still impressive structure set among flowering trees. "This is the guest house," Thomas explained as the driver opened the door for them. "Like I said, it's separate from the main house." Claire stepped out, clutching her duffel bag. The guest house was larger than any home she had ever lived in, with a stone facade and large windows overlooking a koi pond. "It's nice," she said inadequately. Thomas smiled, understanding her shock. "It's just a house," he said softly. "What matters is who's in it." They walked inside, where Thomas gave Claire a quick tour. The spacious living room with its stone fireplace, the modern kitchen with every appliance imaginable, the 2 bedrooms upstairs, each with its own bathroom. "You can take the master bedroom," Thomas said. "It has more space for Emma's things." "What things?" Claire asked with a small laugh. "We have clothes for about 3 days and 2 stuffed animals." Thomas glanced down at Emma, still sleeping peacefully in his arms. "We'll need to fix that. Do you want me to have someone go shopping for the essentials? A crib, changing table, diapers? Or would you prefer to go yourself tomorrow?" Claire hesitated, clearly uncomfortable with the offer but also practical enough to see the necessity. "Maybe a little of both? I can make a list of what we need most urgently." "Perfect," Thomas agreed. He carefully transferred Emma back to Claire's arms. "I should let you get settled. There's food in the fridge. My housekeeper keeps the guest house stocked, but I can have dinner sent over later if you'd prefer." "That's not necessary," Claire began, but Thomas cut her off gently. "Please let me do this small thing. I've missed 6 months of providing for both of you." After a moment, Claire nodded. "Dinner would be nice." "Thank you." Thomas looked at Emma one more time, unable to believe how much his life had changed in the span of a few hours. "I have some calls to make, things to rearrange for the next few days so I can spend time with you both. Is it okay if I come back around 6? We could have dinner together." "Okay," Claire agreed. "But Thomas, this doesn't mean. I'm not expecting." "I know," he said quickly. "One day at a time. 1 week to start. No pressure beyond that." After he left, Claire walked slowly through the guest house, taking in the luxury that surrounded them. She laid Emma down in the center of the king-sized bed, surrounding her with pillows to keep her from rolling off, and then sank down beside her. "What are we doing here, Em?" she whispered to her sleeping daughter. "Is this a mistake?" Emma stirred slightly but didn't wake. Claire thought about the past 6 months, the joy of holding her daughter for the first time, mixed with the pain of doing it alone. The exhaustion of night feedings after working full days at the gallery. The constant worry about money, especially after losing her job. She had been determined to manage on her own, to prove that she didn't need Thomas or his money. But seeing him today, watching how tenderly he had held Emma, had cracked something in her carefully constructed defenses. He had the right to know his daughter. And Emma had the right to know her father, especially one who seemed genuinely interested in being part of her life. A week, Claire reminded herself. They would stay for a week, accept the temporary help, and then figure out their next steps. Pushing aside her thoughts, she began unpacking their meager belongings, hanging up Emma's few outfits in the walk-in closet that was bigger than their entire previous bathroom. At exactly 6 o'clock, there was a soft knock on the door. Claire opened it to find Thomas standing there with a bouquet of daisies. Her favorite flowers, she noted with surprise that he remembered, and a small stuffed elephant. "I thought Emma might like this," he said, offering the toy. "And the flowers are for you. A housewarming gift." "Thank you," Claire said, taking both items. "Come in." Emma's awake, playing on the bed. Thomas followed her upstairs to the master bedroom, where Emma was indeed awake, babbling happily as she tried to grab her own toes. "Hello, beautiful girl," Thomas said, approaching slowly. "Remember me?" To both parents' surprise, Emma squealed with delight when she saw him, holding up her arms to be picked up. "She definitely remembers you," Claire said, watching as Thomas carefully lifted their daughter. "She's usually more cautious with new people." "Maybe she can sense that we're connected," Thomas suggested, holding the elephant where Emma could see it. "Look what I brought you." Emma immediately grabbed for the toy, examining it with serious concentration before hugging it to her chest. "I'd say that's a hit," Claire observed with a small smile. They went downstairs, where dinner had been delivered while Claire was getting Emma ready. Gourmet pasta, salad, and warm bread, the familiar aroma reminding Claire of their early dates when Thomas would cook for her in his much smaller apartment. "I remembered you like Italian," Thomas said as they settled at the dining table, Emma in Claire's lap. "Some things don't change," Claire replied, accepting the plate he offered. As they ate, the conversation flowed more easily than either had expected. Claire told Thomas about Emma's birth, 14 hours of labor but worth every minute, her first smile, at 6 weeks right on schedule, and her emerging personality, curious about everything just like you. Thomas shared updates about his company, careful to avoid sounding boastful. "We've grown faster than I expected," he said. "It's been exciting but overwhelming at times." "Is that why you never checked your personal messages?" Claire asked, the question slipping out before she could stop it. Thomas set down his fork. "I'm not making excuses, but yes, partly. I was working 18-hour days, sleeping at the office. I told my assistant to filter everything that wasn't directly business-related." He met her eyes. "It was a mistake. The biggest of my life." Claire nodded, accepting his answer without commenting further. She turned her attention to Emma, who was starting to fuss. "She needs her evening bottle. I should get it ready?" "May I?" Thomas asked hesitantly. "Feed her, I mean. If you'll show me how." Claire studied him for a moment, then nodded. "Of course. She's your daughter too." She prepared the bottle while Thomas held Emma, watching carefully as Claire tested the temperature on her wrist. "Not too hot, not too cold," she explained. "Like Goldilocks," Thomas said with a smile. "Exactly. Here, hold her like this." Claire adjusted his arms, positioning Emma so she was semi-reclined. "Support her head, that's it. Now offer her the bottle." Thomas followed her instructions, his billion-dollar business deal negotiation skills suddenly useless in the face of this much more important task. Emma latched onto the bottle eagerly, her eyes fixed on Thomas's face as she drank. "She's staring at me," he whispered, afraid to break the spell. "She does that," Claire said, watching them from across the table. "The doctor says it's how babies bond, by making eye contact during feeding." Thomas felt a lump form in his throat. "I can't believe how much I've missed," he said quietly. "You're here now," Claire replied, and for the first time, her tone held no accusation. After dinner, they settled in the living room, where Emma practiced her newest skill, rolling over and trying to push herself up on her hands. "She's trying to crawl," Thomas observed, watching in fascination. "Almost," Claire agreed. "The doctor says she's advancing quickly. She might be mobile before we know it." "That's my girl," Thomas said proudly, then glanced at Claire. "Our girl, I mean." They watched Emma play until her eyelids began to droop. Claire gathered her up, explaining the bedtime routine as she carried her upstairs. Thomas followed, observing every step, the changing into pajamas, the last bottle, the soft lullaby Claire sang. "Would you like to put her down?" Claire asked when Emma was nearly asleep. Carefully, Thomas took his daughter and placed her in the center of the big bed, surrounding her with pillows as he had seen Claire do earlier. "We need to get her a proper crib," he whispered. "Tomorrow," Claire agreed. "I made a list like you suggested." They watched Emma sleep for a moment, standing close enough that their arms brushed. "Thank you for today," Thomas said quietly as they stepped out of the bedroom. "For giving me this chance." Claire looked up at him, her expression unreadable. "Emma deserves to know her father." "And what about you?" Thomas asked, unable to help himself. "What do you deserve?" Claire tensed slightly. "That's not what this week is about." "I know," Thomas said quickly. I've missed you too, Claire. Not just as Emma's mother. As you." Before she could respond, he took a step back. "But I understand that's not on the table right now. And I respect that. I should go and let you get some rest." At the door he paused. "I've cleared my schedule for tomorrow. I thought maybe we could go shopping for Emma's things together, all three of us. If you're comfortable with that." Claire nodded. "That would be good. Emma should see us doing normal family things together, even if we're not." She trailed off. "Even if we're not a couple," Thomas finished for her. "I understand. This is about her, not us." He said goodnight and walked back to the main house, his mind racing with plans for the next day, the next week, and beyond. One step at a time, he reminded himself. He had won Claire's agreement to stay for a week. That was enough for now. In the guest house, Claire stood at the window watching Thomas's retreating figure. She thought about how easily he had held Emma, how naturally he had taken to feeding her, how his eyes had lit up when she smiled at him. 1 week, she whispered to herself. Just 1 week to figure things out. But as she climbed into bed beside her sleeping daughter, she couldn't help wondering if 1 week would be enough, or if it would be too much, reminding her of all she had tried to forget about the man she had once loved. The next morning, Thomas arrived at the guest house shortly after 8, carrying a tray with coffee, fresh pastries, and a small stuffed giraffe for Emma. "I thought you might like breakfast," he said when Claire opened the door, still in her pajamas with Emma on her hip. "And I couldn't resist getting her another animal. Is it too much?" Claire smiled despite herself. "The coffee is definitely not too much. Come in." They settled in the kitchen, Emma happily exploring her new toy while the adults drank their coffee. "I made some calls last night," Thomas said. "Your things from storage will be delivered this afternoon. And I've arranged for us to have a private shopping experience at Bambino's. It's supposed to be the best baby store in the city. They're opening early just for us so we won't have to deal with crowds." Claire raised an eyebrow. "Is that how you live now? Private shopping experiences and special treatment?" Thomas looked slightly embarrassed. "Sometimes. Not because I want to show off, but because it's simpler. Fewer distractions." "You mean fewer regular people," Claire said, but her tone was teasing rather than critical. "Partly," Thomas admitted. "The company's success has made me more recognizable than I'd like. It's easier to get things done without constant interruptions." He looked at her directly. "But if you prefer a regular shopping trip, we can do that instead." Claire considered for a moment, then shook her head. "Actually, a private shopping trip sounds nice. Emma gets overwhelmed in crowded places sometimes. And I could do without the stares when people realize who you are." Relief crossed Thomas's face. "Great. They're expecting us at 9:30 if that works for you." "Perfect. Just let me get us both dressed." While Claire and Emma got ready, Thomas explored the guest house more thoroughly in daylight. He noticed the personal touches Claire had already added. Emma's blanket spread on the living room floor, Claire's worn paperback novel on the coffee table, the list of baby items they needed propped against the fruit bowl. He picked up the list, scanning Claire's neat handwriting. Crib, changing table, high chair, baby bathtub, baby monitor, diapers, wipes, more clothes. Thomas took out his phone, snapping a picture of the list to ensure he didn't forget anything. He wanted to buy everything on it and more, but he reminded himself to follow Claire's lead. She had been Emma's only parent for 6 months. She knew what their daughter needed. Claire returned downstairs with Emma dressed in a yellow romper, her wispy dark hair combed to one side. "We're ready," she announced. Thomas looked up, struck again by how perfect his daughter was. "She's beautiful," he said simply. Claire smiled, a genuine smile that reminded Thomas of happier times. "She is, isn't she? She got your eyes and my stubbornness." "A powerful combination," Thomas agreed, holding the door for them. At Bambino's, they were greeted by the owner herself, a stylish older woman who introduced herself as Mrs. Chen. "It's an honor to help you select items for your little one," she said, leading them into the closed store. "Thank you for accommodating us on such short notice," Thomas replied. "Let's start with the essentials," Claire suggested, consulting her list. "The crib is most important." Mrs. Chen led them to a display of cribs ranging from simple to elaborate. "All of our cribs meet the highest safety standards," she explained. Claire gravitated toward a mid-range white crib with clean lines. "This one is nice," she said, checking the price tag and then quickly looking away. Thomas noticed her reaction. "Is that the one you want?" he asked. "It's lovely, but..." Claire hesitated. "Price is not a concern today," Thomas said gently. "Please choose what you like best for Emma." Mrs. Chen stepped away discreetly, giving them privacy. "Thomas, these cribs cost more than my monthly rent did," Claire said in a low voice. "I know it's uncomfortable," he acknowledged. "But please let me do this. It's not about showing off or throwing money around. It's about giving Emma the best start we can." Claire looked down at their daughter, who was contentedly chewing on her fist in Thomas's arms. "Okay," she finally agreed. "But I get to choose everything based on what I think is best for her, not what's most expensive." "Deal?" Thomas said with a smile. With that understanding reached, the shopping trip became more relaxed. Claire selected the white crib, a matching changing table and dresser, a comfortable glider for night feedings, and a high chair that could be adjusted as Emma grew. Thomas added items to their selections when appropriate: a top-of-the-line baby monitor with video capabilities, a music player designed specifically for infants, a soft floor mat for tummy time, always checking with Claire first. What about clothes? He asked as they moved to that section of the store. Does she have enough? Claire laughed. She grows so fast. What fit her last month barely squeezes on now. They selected a variety of outfits in the next size up, Thomas unable to resist a tiny pair of sneakers that matched ones he owned. For when we go for walks together, he explained, and Claire didn't object. By the time they finished, they had selected everything on Claire's list and more. Thomas arranged for all of it to be delivered that afternoon, tipping the staff generously for the rush service. Thank you, Claire said as they left the store, Emma now asleep in the carrier Thomas had insisted on buying and wearing immediately. She'll have everything she needs now. It's the least I can do, Thomas replied. Are you hungry? We could have lunch before going back to the house. They found a quiet cafe nearby, where they settled at a corner table. Emma continued to sleep against Thomas's chest, completely comfortable with her father after less than 24 hours. She trusts you already, Claire observed as they waited for their food. Thomas looked down at his sleeping daughter. I don't deserve her trust yet, he said quietly. But I'm going to earn it. That's a start, Claire replied. As they ate, Thomas asked more questions about the pregnancy and birth, absorbing every detail Claire shared. She found herself relaxing enough to show him photos on her phone. The sonogram pictures, her growing belly at different stages, Emma's first day in the hospital. I wish I had been there, Thomas said, staring at a photo of newborn Emma, red-faced and screaming. Me too, Claire admitted. When they returned to the house, the delivery trucks were already there. One with Claire's items from storage, the others with the baby furniture and supplies they had purchased that morning. Thomas immediately took charge, directing the workers on where to place everything. The nursery items go to the second bedroom upstairs, he instructed. Ms. Walker's personal items to the master. Claire watched in amazement as an army of workers transformed the guest house in a matter of hours. By late afternoon, Emma had a fully furnished nursery with the crib assembled, clothes hung in the closet and new toys arranged on shelves. Claire's few belongings looked almost lost in the spacious master bedroom, but she felt a sense of relief seeing her familiar comforter on the bed, her books stacked on the nightstand. When the workers had gone, Thomas found Claire in the nursery, sitting in the new glider with Emma in her arms. Is everything where you want it? He asked, leaning against the door frame. It's perfect, Claire replied, looking around the room. Better than I could have imagined for her. Thomas moved closer, kneeling beside the glider. What about you? Is your room okay? More than okay, Claire assured him. Thank you for getting my things from storage. It makes this feel more real somehow. This is real, Thomas said softly. All of it. Their eyes met for a moment before Claire looked away. It's getting late. I should start Emma's bedtime routine. Of course, Thomas said, standing up. I'll let you handle that. Unless, would you mind if I stayed? Just to watch. I'd like to learn the routine. Claire hesitated, then nodded. You should know it. You're her father. Those words, you're her father, hit Thomas with full force every time Claire said them. He watched carefully as Claire bathed Emma in the new baby tub, dressed her in fresh pajamas, and prepared her evening bottle. Would you like to feed her again? Claire offered. It helps to build the bond. Thomas accepted eagerly, settling in the glider with Emma cradled in his arms. This time he needed less guidance with the bottle, and Emma seemed even more content than the night before, her eyes fixed on his face as she drank. I have a confession to make, Thomas said quietly as Emma finished her bottle. I canceled all my meetings for the rest of the week. I want to be here to learn everything I can about being her dad before your week is up. Claire sat on the ottoman near his feet. That's good, she said. She should get to know you. And vice versa. What about you? Thomas asked. You mentioned needing to find a job. Do you want to start looking? I can watch Emma while you go to interviews. You do that? Claire asked, surprised. Of course, Thomas replied. I want to spend time with her anyway. And you shouldn't have to put your career on hold just because I've suddenly appeared in your lives. Claire considered this. I might take you up on that. But not right away. I'd need to see how Emma does with you alone first. I understand, Thomas said. Baby steps. As Emma drifted to sleep in his arms, Thomas felt a peace he hadn't experienced in years. The constant drive that had pushed him to build his company, to accumulate wealth and power, seemed distant and less important now. I should go, he said reluctantly, carefully transferring Emma to Claire. Same time tomorrow morning? We'll be here, Claire promised. As Thomas walked back to the main house, he pulled out his phone and did something he'd never done before. He set an out-of-office reply for the entire week, instructing his executive team to handle all decisions without him unless absolutely necessary. For the first time since founding his company, Thomas Reynolds was putting something else first. And it felt right. "You're sure about this?" Claire asked for the third time, standing in the doorway of the guest house with her purse over her shoulder. "You'll call if anything happens?" Thomas smiled, holding Emma comfortably on his hip. "We'll be fine. I've watched you for 3 days now. I know the routine, the emergency numbers are on the fridge, and it's only for 2 hours." It was Thursday morning. They had been at Thomas's estate for 4 days, falling into a surprisingly comfortable rhythm. Thomas came over early each morning, spent the day learning how to care for Emma, and returned to the main house each night, always a little more reluctant to leave. Claire had received a call the previous evening about a job opportunity at a new gallery opening downtown. The interview was at 10, and despite her nervousness, she had agreed to let Thomas watch Emma alone for the first time. "She might get fussy around 11, Claire warned. "That's when she usually takes her morning nap." "I know," Thomas assured her. "Bottle first, then rock her for a few minutes until she's drowsy, then put her down in the crib. I've been taking notes." Claire smiled at that, Thomas approaching fatherhood with the same methodical attention he gave to business deals. "Okay," she relented. "I'll be back by noon at the latest." "Take your time," Thomas said. "This is important. We want you to find something you love." Claire hesitated, then reached out to smooth Emma's hair. "Be good for your dad, sweet girl." The word dad still sent a thrill through Thomas. "Good luck at the interview," he said. "You'll be amazing." After Claire left, Thomas carried Emma to the living room, where he had set up a blanket with her favorite toys. "Just you and me now, Emma," he said, settling her on the floor. "What shall we do first?" Emma answered by grabbing a colorful stacking ring and immediately putting it in her mouth. "Excellent choice," Thomas laughed. "Teething toys it is." For the next hour, Thomas followed Emma's lead, playing with whatever toy caught her interest, reading from the board books Claire had shown him were her favorites, and narrating everything he did, a technique Claire had explained helped with language development. "Now I'm picking up the blue block," he said as Emma watched intently. "And now I'm stacking it on top of the red block. Can you say block?" "No, that's okay. You'll say it when you're ready." When Emma began rubbing her eyes and fussing slightly, Thomas checked his watch. 10:45, close enough to the nap time Claire had mentioned. "Bottle time, princess," he said, carrying her to the kitchen. He prepared the formula exactly as Claire had shown him, testing the temperature on his wrist twice before offering it to Emma. She drank eagerly at first, then more slowly as sleepiness overtook her. Thomas carried her upstairs to the nursery, settling in the glider to rock her gently. Looking down at his daughter's face, her eyelids growing heavy as she fought sleep, Thomas felt an overwhelming surge of love. "I wish I had known about you from the beginning," he whispered. "But I promise I'll never miss another day, Emma. Not if I can help it." When she was finally asleep, Thomas carefully transferred her to the crib, holding his breath until he was sure she wouldn't wake. Then he stepped back, watching her small chest rise and fall. "Sweet dreams, little one," he murmured before tiptoeing out of the room, leaving the door ajar as Claire always did. Downstairs, Thomas used the quiet time to make a few work calls, keeping his voice low. His executive team was handling things well in his absence, but there were still decisions only he could make. "Yes, approve the patent filing," he told his head of legal affairs. "But push the merger talks back another 2 weeks. I need more time to evaluate their tech stack." As he hung up, Thomas heard a sound that made his heart jump. Emma crying upstairs. He raced up the steps, finding her standing in her crib, tears streaming down her face. Hey, it's okay," he soothed, lifting her up. "Dad's here." Emma's cries subsided almost immediately as she clung to his neck. Thomas checked her diaper, dry, and offered her water from the sippy cup Claire had packed, which she refused. "Maybe you just wanted company, huh?" he asked, carrying her back downstairs. "That's okay. I'm not going anywhere." By the time Claire returned just after noon, Thomas and Emma were on the living room floor, playing a game where Thomas pretended her stuffed elephant was trying to catch her toes, sending her into fits of giggles. "It sounds like things went well," Claire observed from the doorway, smiling at the scene before her. Thomas looked up, surprised. "We had a great morning. She only napped for about 30 minutes, but otherwise, everything went according to plan." "How was the interview?" Claire sat down on the couch, kicking off her heels. "Good, I think. They want me to curate their contemporary collection, which is exactly what I was doing at my last gallery. The pay is better too." That's fantastic, Thomas said sincerely. When will you hear back? They said by Monday, Claire replied, holding out her arms for Emma, who crawled over eagerly. Hello, sweet girl. Did you have fun with Daddy? Thomas felt his chest tighten at hearing Claire refer to him as Daddy to Emma. It was the first time she had used the term so naturally. I was thinking, he said carefully, if you get this job we should talk about childcare options. My schedule is flexible, but I know I can't be here every day once this week is over. Claire looked up, surprised by his direct mention of their arrangement ending. Yes, we should discuss that. Unless, Thomas began, then stopped, unsure if he should continue. Unless what? Claire prompted. Thomas took a deep breath. Unless you'd consider staying longer. Both of you. Not just in the guest house, but in the city. Near me so I can be part of Emma's daily life. Claire's expression was unreadable. Thomas? I know it's a lot to ask, he continued quickly. And I'm not suggesting we jump back into a relationship. I've missed so much already. I don't want to miss any more if I can help it. Claire shifted Emma to her other knee, buying time to gather her thoughts. What exactly are you proposing? I'm not sure yet, Thomas admitted. Maybe you could continue staying here until you find a place you like. Or I could help you find an apartment nearby. Whatever makes you most comfortable. I just want to be able to see Emma regularly, daily if possible. And if I had taken the job in Bridgeport? Claire asked. Would you have tried to stop me? No, Thomas said firmly. Never. But I would have found a way to visit often. Opened an office there if necessary. Claire almost smiled at that, Thomas and his grand gestures. Let's see if I get this job first, she said. Then we can talk about longer-term arrangements. Fair enough, Thomas agreed, relief evident in his voice. They spent the rest of the day together, taking Emma for a walk around the property's extensive gardens. Thomas pointed out the koi pond, the rose garden, the small orchard of fruit trees. This place is like a park, Claire commented as they paused in the shade of an oak tree. Emma will love exploring it when she's a little older. I hope she gets the chance, Thomas said quietly. Claire glanced at him, then away. The weather's supposed to be nice tomorrow. We could have a picnic lunch by the pond. I'd like that, Thomas replied, recognizing the small olive branch she was extending. That evening, after Emma was asleep, Claire found herself restless in the guest house alone. Making a sudden decision, she picked up her phone and called the only person who knew her well enough to give honest advice. Hey sis, she said when her sister answered. Got a minute to talk? Of course, Megan replied. How's the billionaire baby daddy situation going? Claire laughed despite herself. That's what I want to talk about, actually. Things are complicated. I figured they would be, Megan said. Tell me everything. Claire described the past 4 days, Thomas's obvious love for Emma, his generosity without being overbearing, the way he had rearranged his entire schedule to spend time with them. He wants us to stay, she finished. Not just for the week but longer term. So he can be part of Emma's daily life. And how do you feel about that? Megan asked. Claire sighed. Confused. On one hand, it's been amazing seeing him with Emma. He's a natural father, Meg. And she adores him already. And on the other hand? On the other hand, I spent 6 months accepting that we would be on our own. I made peace with that. Now suddenly he's back in our lives and everything's changing so fast. Do you still have feelings for him? Megan asked bluntly. Claire was silent for a moment. I don't know, she finally admitted. Sometimes, when I see him with Emma, I remember all the reasons I fell in love with him in the first place. But then I also remember how easily he shut me out when his business became the priority. People can change, Megan suggested. Can they? Claire countered. Or do they just reveal who they truly are under pressure? Maybe both, her sister replied wisely. Look, I can't tell you what to do. But from what you've told me, he seems genuinely remorseful and committed to being a good father. That counts for something. It does, Claire agreed. I just don't want to confuse being co-parents with rekindling a relationship. Then don't, Megan said simply. Set clear boundaries. Stay in the guest house, or find your own place nearby if that's too close for comfort, and co-parent. See where it goes without any pressure. That's actually really good advice, Claire said, surprised. Megan laughed. I do have my moments. Just promise me one thing. What's that? Don't make decisions based on pride or fear. Make them based on what's truly best for Emma, and for you. After hanging up, Claire walked to the nursery, watching Emma sleep peacefully in her new crib, surrounded by the life Thomas had helped create for her in just a few days. Whatever happened between her and Thomas, one thing was becoming clear. Emma deserved to have both her parents in her life. And Thomas deserved the chance to be the father he so clearly wanted to be. The question now was how to make that happen without risking her own heart in the process. Friday morning dawned clear and warm, perfect for the picnic they had planned. Thomas arrived at the guest house earlier than usual, carrying a wicker basket and a rolled-up blanket. "The chef packed us lunch," he explained when Claire opened the door. "Nothing fancy, just sandwiches and salads. And there's pureed fruit for Emma." Claire smiled at his thoughtfulness. "That sounds perfect. We're almost ready." Thomas followed her inside, where Emma was sitting in her high chair, concentrating fiercely on picking up Cheerios with her tiny fingers and getting them into her mouth. "Good morning, princess," Thomas greeted her, dropping a kiss on the top of her head. "Are you ready for our picnic adventure?" Emma responded by offering him a soggy Cheerio. "Thank you," Thomas said seriously, pretending to eat it before discreetly putting it on a napkin. "Delicious." Claire watched the interaction, struck again by how natural Thomas was with Emma. It was as if he had been there all along, not just for 5 days. "I'll get her diaper bag ready," she said, turning away before Thomas could catch the emotion in her eyes. They set out for the gardens, Thomas carrying Emma in the baby carrier on his chest while Claire brought the picnic basket. They found a shady spot near the koi pond, spreading the blanket on the soft grass. "This is beautiful," Claire said as she settled Emma on the blanket with a few toys. "I can't believe this is all yours." Thomas looked around the expansive garden. "It never felt like mine until now," he admitted. "More like a show property, something to impress business associates. Having you and Emma here, it makes it feel like a home for the first time." The words hung between them, heavy with meaning. "Thomas," Claire began, unsure what she wanted to say. He held up a hand. I know. I'm not pushing. Just being honest." They ate lunch in comfortable conversation, talking about Emma's development, the gallery job Claire had interviewed for, and Thomas's company. Emma alternated between playing with her toys and demanding bites of pureed peaches from both parents. After lunch, Thomas lay back on the blanket, and Emma immediately crawled onto his chest, making them both laugh. "She's going to be a climber," Claire warned. "We'll need to childproof everything once she's fully mobile." "I'll hire someone to do it," Thomas said immediately. "For both houses. Just in case." The implication that they might spend time in the main house too wasn't lost on Claire, but she didn't comment on it. They spent a lazy afternoon in the garden, taking turns playing with Emma and pointing out butterflies and birds. When Emma fell asleep for her afternoon nap, they laid her on a soft cushion in the shade, sitting nearby to watch over her. "She sleeps so peacefully," Thomas observed. "Not always," Claire said with a smile. "You should see her at 3 in the morning when she decides it's playtime." "I'd like to," Thomas said quietly. "See her at 3 in the morning, I mean. And at 7 in the morning. And every hour in between." Claire looked at him directly. "Thomas, what are you really asking for here?" He met her gaze. "Honestly? Everything. A second chance with you, a first chance with Emma, a real family. But I know that's not fair to expect after everything that happened." "It's not that simple," Claire agreed. "So what would be fair to ask for?" Thomas questioned. "If you were me, what would you ask for?" Claire considered this. "Time," she finally said. "Regular, consistent time with Emma. A chance to prove that you're in this for the long haul, not just caught up in the novelty of discovering you have a daughter." "I can do that," Thomas said firmly. "What about you though? What do you want?" The question caught Claire off guard. "I want Emma to be happy and secure," she said automatically. "I know that," Thomas pressed gently. "But what do you want for yourself?" Claire stared out at the koi pond, gathering her thoughts. "Stability," she finally said. "A job I enjoy. A home that feels safe. And," she hesitated, "not to feel like I'm doing everything alone anymore." Thomas nodded, letting her words sink in. "I can help with all of that if you'll let me." "Without strings attached?" Claire asked, raising an eyebrow. "Without strings," Thomas confirmed. "Just co-parents doing what's best for our daughter." Before Claire could respond, Emma stirred, whimpering slightly as she woke from her nap. Both parents turned to her immediately, their personal conversation set aside. "Someone's hungry," Claire said, reaching for the diaper bag. The rest of the afternoon passed pleasantly, with no return to their deeper discussion. As evening approached, they packed up their picnic and headed back to the guest house. "I'm having dinner with the board tonight," Thomas said reluctantly as they reached the door. Some quarterly review thing I couldn't reschedule. Will you be okay on your own? We managed for 6 months, Claire reminded him with a small smile. We'll be fine for one evening. Thomas nodded, though he looked disappointed. I'll come by in the morning as usual then? Around 8. We'll be here, Claire assured him. After he left, Claire went through Emma's evening routine, finding herself missing Thomas's presence more than she had expected. In just 5 days, he had become such a fixture in their lives that his absence was noticeable. Your daddy's quite something, isn't he? She murmured to Emma as she rocked her to sleep. He just walks back into our lives and suddenly everything changes. Emma's only response was to yawn widely, her eyelids drooping. Later that night, after putting Emma down, Claire wandered through the guest house restlessly. Despite its spaciousness, she felt confined. Making a sudden decision, she checked that the baby monitor was working, then stepped outside onto the patio. The night was warm, stars visible above the garden. Claire walked a little way from the house, breathing in the scent of night-blooming flowers. She found herself drawn toward the main house, its windows glowing with soft light. As she approached, she noticed a figure sitting alone on the main terrace. Thomas, home from his dinner earlier than expected, nursing what looked like a glass of whiskey. He looked up as she approached, surprise and pleasure crossing his face. Claire? Is everything okay? Is Emma? She's fine, Claire assured him quickly. Fast asleep. I have the monitor. She held up the device in her hand. I just needed some air. I didn't expect you back so soon. I cut the dinner short, Thomas admitted. Couldn't focus on quarterly projections when all I wanted was to be back here. He gestured to the chair beside him. Would you like to join me? Claire hesitated, then sat down. How did the board take that? You leaving early? Thomas shrugged. They're getting used to the new me. The one with priorities beyond profit margins. And who is that exactly? Claire asked. The new you? Thomas considered this, swirling the amber liquid in his glass. Someone who's realizing that success isn't measured by bank accounts or business deals, he said finally. Someone trying to fix the mistakes he made before they cost him everything that really matters. That's a pretty speech, Claire said, but there was no bite to her words. It's not a speech, Thomas replied. It's the truth. Seeing you at that bus stop meeting Emma, it changed everything, Claire. In an instant. People don't change overnight, Claire said softly. No, Thomas agreed. But sometimes they get a wake-up call that makes them see clearly for the first time. That's what happened to me. They sat in silence for a moment, the night sounds of the garden surrounding them. Would you like a drink? Thomas offered. There's wine, whiskey, whatever you'd prefer. Just water, please, Claire replied. I'm still breastfeeding occasionally. Thomas nodded, going inside to fetch her water. When he returned, he had removed his tie and suit jacket, looking more like the man she had first fallen in love with years ago. Can I ask you something personal? He said as he handed her the glass. Claire nodded cautiously. Were you happy? Before, when we were together. The question surprised her. Yes, she answered honestly. Most of the time I was very happy. Until I stopped paying attention, Thomas said, the self-recrimination evident in his voice. Until the company became all-consuming, Claire corrected gently. I never begrudged you success, Thomas. I just couldn't compete with it for your attention. Thomas nodded, accepting this. And now, these past few days? Have they been terrible? Claire smiled despite herself. No, they've been surprisingly nice. You're good with Emma. Better than I expected. Thanks for the vote of confidence, Thomas said dryly, but he was smiling too. You know what I mean, Claire continued. You've jumped into fatherhood without hesitation. It's impressive. It's easy to love her, Thomas said simply. She's perfect. On that we agree completely. They fell into comfortable silence, watching the stars above. Thomas's phone buzzed with a message, but he ignored it. Aren't you going to check that? Claire asked. Could be important. Nothing's more important than this moment, Thomas replied, setting the phone face down on the table. The gesture wasn't lost on Claire. 2 years ago, Thomas would have answered any message immediately, regardless of what they were doing. Tomorrow's Saturday, Thomas said after a while. Our week is almost up. Claire tensed slightly. Yes. Have you thought any more about what happens next? Claire looked down at her water glass. I have. When she didn't elaborate, Thomas prompted gently, and I think Emma deserves to have both her parents in her life, Claire said slowly. Consistently. Regardless of what happens between you and me. Hope flickered in Thomas's eyes. What does that mean practically? It means I'd like to accept your offer to stay longer, Claire said. At least until I sort out the job situation and find a more permanent place to live. Thomas smiled, genuine joy lighting his face. I'm glad. But, Claire continued firmly, we need to establish some boundaries. This isn't about us getting back together. It's about co-parenting Emma effectively. I understand, Thomas said, though there was a flicker of disappointment in his expression. Whatever terms make you comfortable, I'll respect them. Thank you, Claire said. She stood up, suddenly aware of how intimate this night conversation felt. I should get back. Emma might wake up. Thomas rose as well. I'll walk you. They strolled back to the guest house in companionable silence, the baby monitor still quiet in Claire's hand. At the door they paused awkwardly. Thank you for tonight, Claire said. The picnic, I mean. And the talk. It was nice. It was, Thomas agreed. Sleep well, Claire. He leaned forward hesitantly, and for a heart-stopping moment, Claire thought he might kiss her. Instead, he simply squeezed her hand gently before turning to go. Claire watched him walk away, a confusing mix of relief and disappointment swirling inside her. As she closed the door and checked on her sleeping daughter, she wondered if staying longer was the right decision, or if she was setting herself up for heartbreak all over again. But looking down at Emma, peaceful in her crib, Claire knew she had to try. For her daughter's sake, if not for her own. Saturday morning brought unexpected news. Claire's phone rang just after breakfast, while Thomas was giving Emma her bath. Hello? Yes, this is Claire Walker, she answered, stepping into the hallway for privacy. Thomas could hear the surprised lift in her voice, followed by excited questions. When she returned to the bathroom doorway, her eyes were wide. Everything okay? He asked, carefully rinsing shampoo from Emma's hair. That was the gallery, Claire said, her voice reflecting her shock. They want me to start on Monday. As the head curator, not just the contemporary collection. The salary is, it's more than I've ever made. Claire, that's fantastic. Thomas exclaimed, genuinely happy for her. What did you tell them? I said yes, of course, she replied, then bit her lip. But now I'm worried about childcare. They need me full-time and it's all happening so fast. Thomas wrapped Emma in a fluffy towel, lifting her from the tub. I told you I can watch her sometimes. And we can hire a nanny for when neither of us is available. The best one we can find. A nanny, Claire repeated as if testing the word. Such a luxury had never been within her reach before. Only if you're comfortable with it, Thomas added quickly. We could interview candidates together, find someone we both trust completely. Claire leaned against the doorframe, watching as Thomas gently dried Emma's hair. You're really serious about this co-parenting thing, aren't you? Completely serious, Thomas confirmed. I meant what I said last night. Whatever terms make you comfortable. Claire studied him for a moment. Okay, she decided. Let's look for a nanny. But I want to be heavily involved in the selection process. Of course, Thomas agreed. It's your call. Our call, he corrected himself. While Emma napped later that morning, Thomas made some calls, using his connections to identify top childcare agencies in the city. By afternoon, they had a list of highly qualified candidates available for interviews the next day. That was fast, Claire commented as Thomas showed her the profiles. When you pay triple the normal rate, agencies tend to move quickly, Thomas said with a wry smile. I hope that's okay. I just wanted to make sure you have options before Monday. Claire shook her head in amazement. I'm still getting used to how differently things work in your world. Our world now, Thomas said gently. At least as far as Emma is concerned. The rest of the day passed in a flurry of preparation for Claire's new job. Thomas insisted on taking her shopping for work clothes, bringing Emma along in her stroller. Unlike their previous shopping trip, this one was at regular stores during normal hours with no special treatment. Claire appreciated the gesture, recognizing Thomas's effort to make her comfortable. She selected several professional outfits, always checking the price tags despite Thomas's assurances that money wasn't an issue. Think of it as an investment in your career, he suggested when she balked at an expensive but beautifully tailored blazer. You deserve to look and feel confident on your first day. Reluctantly, Claire added the blazer to their purchases. As they strolled through the mall afterward, Emma happily watching the crowds from her stroller, an older woman stopped them with a warm smile. What a beautiful family you have, she told Thomas. Your daughter has your eyes. Before Thomas could respond, Claire spoke up. Thank you, she said simply, not correcting the assumption that they were a traditional family. Thomas gave her a questioning look as the woman moved on, but said nothing. It was easier than explaining, Claire said with a shrug, though they both knew it was more than that. That evening, after returning to the estate, Claire surprised Thomas by inviting him to stay for dinner at the guest house. Nothing fancy, she warned. Just pasta with that sauce I found in the fridge. Sounds perfect, Thomas replied, trying not to read too much into the invitation. They cooked together, moving around the kitchen with unexpected harmony, Emma watching from her high chair as she munched on small pieces of cheese. It felt domestic in a way that made Thomas's chest ache with longing for what might have been, what might still be if he was patient enough. After Emma was in bed, they sat on the patio with glasses of wine, discussing the nanny candidates they would interview the next day. I've been thinking, Claire said during a lull in conversation, about where we'll live long-term. Thomas set down his glass, instantly alert. And? The guest house is lovely, Claire continued carefully, but it's still your property. I think I'd feel more independent if we had our own place eventually. Thomas nodded, hiding his disappointment. I understand. Whatever you think is best. But, Claire added, I also think Emma benefits from seeing you daily, so maybe somewhere nearby would make sense. Not too far, but still our own space. I could help you look, Thomas offered. There are some nice family neighborhoods within a few miles. That would be good, Claire agreed. Thank you. As the evening grew later, Thomas reluctantly stood to leave. I should go. Big day tomorrow with the interviews. Claire walked him to the door. Thomas, she said hesitantly, thank you for everything this week. For being so understanding and patient. You don't need to thank me, he replied. I'm just grateful for the chance to be part of Emma's life. And yours in whatever way works. They stood close in the doorway, neither moving away. The air between them felt charged with unspoken words and memories of what they had once shared. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, Claire leaned closer. Thomas remained perfectly still, letting her make the choice. When her lips touched his, it was the lightest of kisses, tentative, questioning. Thomas responded gently, not pushing for more, though every fiber of his being wanted to pull her close. Claire drew back first, her expression a mix of confusion and something else. Desire, perhaps, or the echo of old feelings resurfacing. I should. Thomas began. Go, Claire finished for him. Yes. It's late. Good night, Claire. Good night. As Thomas walked back to the main house, his mind was racing. The kiss had been unexpected but not unwelcome. Was it a momentary lapse on Claire's part, or the beginning of something new? Either way, he wouldn't push. The most important thing was maintaining their fragile co-parenting relationship for Emma's sake. Anything more would have to develop naturally, if it was meant to be. Inside the guest house, Claire touched her fingers to her lips, surprised by her own actions. She hadn't planned to kiss Thomas. It had simply happened, a product of the comfortable evening they had shared and the growing realization that the man he was becoming might be someone she could trust again. But was it wise? Or was she setting herself up for disappointment if his renewed focus on family proved temporary? As she checked on Emma one last time before bed, Claire made a promise to herself. She would proceed cautiously, protecting her heart while still allowing for the possibility that people, even ambitious billionaires, could sometimes change for the better. Sunday brought the nanny interviews, scheduled at hourly intervals throughout the day. Thomas arranged for them to use the formal living room in the main house, wanting the candidates to see the entire property where they would potentially be working. Are you nervous? He asked Claire as they prepared for the first interview. Emma was playing contentedly on a blanket nearby, carefully stacking blocks that immediately tumbled over. A little, Claire admitted. I've never hired anyone before, let alone someone who'll be caring for Emma. We'll know the right person when we meet them, Thomas assured her. Trust your instincts. The first 3 candidates were perfectly qualified on paper, experienced nannies with spotless references and impressive credentials. But something felt off to Claire about each of them. Whether it was the way they spoke more to Thomas than to her, or how they seemed more interested in the luxurious surroundings than in Emma. This is harder than I expected, Claire confessed during a break between interviews. They're all capable, but none of them feel right, Thomas finished for her. I agree. The 4th candidate, a woman named Diane who was in her 40s, arrived precisely on time. Unlike the others, she immediately knelt down to Emma's level, introducing herself to the baby first before standing to greet the parents. She's beautiful, Diane said warmly. How old is she? 6 months, Claire replied, watching carefully as Diane interacted with Emma. Ah, such a wonderful age, Diane said. They're just starting to show their personalities, aren't they? The interview progressed naturally, with Diane answering their questions thoughtfully and asking pertinent ones of her own, about Emma's routine, her preferences, her development so far. Most importantly to Claire, Diane spoke equally to both parents, respecting Claire's role while acknowledging Thomas's involvement. "I understand you're just beginning as co-parents," Diane said toward the end of the interview. "I want you to know that I see my role not just as caring for Emma, but as supporting both of you as you navigate this journey." When Diane left, Claire turned to Thomas. "Her," she said firmly. "She's the one." Thomas nodded in agreement. "I felt it too. She's perfect." They canceled the remaining interviews and called Diane immediately to offer her the position, which she accepted. She could start the very next day, accompanying Claire to work for the first few days to learn Emma's routine before taking over full-time care. "That's one major worry sorted," Claire said with relief as they walked back to the guest house, Emma dozing in her stroller after the excitement of the day. "Now you can focus on your new job," Thomas replied. "Speaking of which, would you like me to drive you tomorrow? Your first day and all." Claire considered this. "That would be nice, actually. Thank you." They spent the rest of Sunday preparing for the week ahead, going over Diane's contract, organizing Claire's new work clothes, and packing Emma's diaper bag with everything she might need. Neither mentioned the kiss from the night before, though it lingered in the air between them, an unacknowledged current that made even simple interactions feel charged with possibility. That night, after Thomas had gone back to the main house, Claire stood in her bedroom, looking at her outfit for the next day, the tailored blazer Thomas had encouraged her to buy, paired with a simple dress. It represented so much more than just clothing. A new chapter, a second chance at her career, a future she couldn't have imagined a week earlier when she stood at that bus stop in the rain. In the nursery, Emma slept soundly, unaware of how dramatically her life had changed with one chance encounter. Claire watched her daughter's peaceful breathing, overwhelmed by gratitude that Emma would now have both her parents in her life, regardless of what happened between her and Thomas. The next morning was a flurry of activity. Thomas arrived early, bringing coffee and pastries. Diane arrived shortly after, immediately putting Claire at ease with her calm competence as she interacted with Emma. "She'll be fine," Diane assured Claire, who was finding it harder than expected to leave her daughter. "We'll send you photos throughout the day." "We've got this," Thomas added. "You focus on impressing everyone at the gallery." Claire nodded, picking up her new handbag, another gift from Thomas that she had initially resisted but now appreciated. "Okay, I can do this." The drive to the gallery was quiet, Claire reviewing mental notes about her new position. Thomas pulled up in front of the modern building right on time. "Good luck," he said as she gathered her things. "You're going to be amazing." Claire paused, her hand on the door handle. "Thank you, Thomas, for everything this week. I don't know what would have happened if my tire hadn't gone flat near that bus stop." Thomas finished with a smile. "Some things are just meant to be, I guess." Claire returned his smile. "Maybe so." She leaned over impulsively and kissed his cheek. "I'll see you tonight." Thomas watched her walk into the building, confident and professional in her new outfit, before driving back to the estate. For the first time in years, his first destination wasn't his office but home, where his daughter was waiting. The day passed in a blur for Claire, who was introduced to staff, shown the collections and briefed on upcoming exhibitions. Her new boss, the gallery owner, was clearly impressed by her knowledge and ideas. "I have a good feeling about this partnership," he told her at the end of the day. "Welcome aboard, Claire." Meanwhile, Thomas spent the day working from home, alternating between video calls in his office and checking on Emma and Diane. By mid-afternoon, he had rearranged his entire weekly schedule to allow for daily time with Emma, delegating more responsibility to his executive team than ever before. When Claire returned that evening, she found Thomas and Emma in the guesthouse kitchen, where Thomas was attempting to feed his daughter pureed vegetables with limited success. "I think she's wearing more than she's eating," he admitted as Claire set down her bag. Claire laughed, the tension of the day melting away at the domestic scene before her. "That's normal." "How was she today?" "Perfect," Thomas said proudly. "Diane is wonderful with her." They went for a walk in the garden, read books, practiced sitting up. I joined them whenever I could between calls. Claire kissed the top of Emma's head, wiping a smear of green from her cheek. "And how was your day? The business empire still standing?" "Barely noticed I was gone," Thomas said with a wink. "Turns out I've been micromanaging unnecessarily for years. My team is perfectly capable without me hovering." "Growing as a person already," Claire teased, but her smile was warm. They fell into a comfortable routine over the following weeks. Claire excelled at her new job, quickly becoming an essential part of the gallery team. Thomas continued working primarily from home, adjusting his schedule to maximize time with Emma while still running his company effectively. Diane proved to be everything they had hoped for and more, caring for Emma with love and skill while respecting both parents' roles. She seamlessly adapted to their unique co-parenting arrangement, never questioning the fact that Thomas visited the guest house daily or that he and Claire sometimes sat talking long after Emma was in bed. As spring turned to summer, Claire began looking at houses nearby, as she had mentioned. Thomas went with her to viewings on weekends, offering input when asked but careful not to overstep. "What do you think of this one?" Claire asked after they had toured a charming craftsman-style home about 10 minutes from Thomas's estate. Emma was exploring the empty living room on all fours, now fully mobile and curious about everything. "It has character," Thomas observed. "Good-sized yard for her to play in. The primary bedroom gets nice morning light." "But," Claire prompted, sensing his hesitation. Thomas sighed. "No, but. If you love it, that's what matters." Claire studied him. "Thomas, we agreed to be honest with each other." "What aren't you saying?" "It just feels far," he admitted. "I know it's only 10 minutes, but—" He trailed off, looking embarrassed. "But you've gotten used to seeing her every day," Claire finished for him. "Seeing us every day." Thomas nodded, not meeting her eyes. "It's selfish, I know. Forget I said anything. The house is perfect for you too." Claire was quiet for a moment, watching Emma pull herself up to standing using a built-in bookshelf. "What if we didn't do this yet?" she said finally. "Didn't do what?" "Move," Claire clarified. "What if we stayed in the guest house a bit longer? Until Emma's a year old, maybe?" Hope flickered in Thomas's eyes. "Are you sure? I thought you wanted your independence." "I do," Claire said. "But I also want what's best for Emma. And right now, having both her parents close seems to be working well." She hesitated. "Unless you're tired of having us on your property?" "Never," Thomas said firmly. "You can stay as long as you want. Forever if it comes to that." The word forever hung between them, loaded with meaning neither was quite ready to address. But that night, after they had returned to the estate and put Emma to bed, Claire didn't say goodnight at the door as usual. Instead, she invited Thomas to stay for a glass of wine on the patio, something that had become a weekly rather than nightly occurrence. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the stars emerge above the garden. "I've been thinking," Claire said finally, "about us." Thomas's heart skipped. "Oh. We've been co-parenting for almost 3 months now," she continued. "And it's been good. Better than I expected." "I agree," Thomas said cautiously. "You've changed," Claire observed. "Or maybe you've just returned to the person you were before the company took over." Thomas considered this. "Maybe both. I'm still ambitious, still driven. But my priorities have shifted. Emma comes first now. You know that." "I do," Claire acknowledged. "I've watched you reschedule million-dollar meetings to attend her doctor's appointments. Turn down business trips because they take you away for too long." "It's not even a difficult choice anymore," Thomas said simply. Claire took a deep breath. "That's why I'm considering re-evaluating our arrangement." Thomas set down his wine glass, afraid to hope. "In what way?" "When we met at the bus stop, I was sure we had no future together," Claire explained. "I agreed to stay here to accept your help solely for Emma's sake. I wasn't looking to rekindle anything between us." "I understand," Thomas said, though his expression betrayed his disappointment. "But these past months," Claire continued, "watching you with Emma, seeing how you've changed your entire life to be her father, it's made me wonder if maybe we should give ourselves another chance too." Thomas stared at her, hardly daring to breathe. "Claire, I'm not saying we should rush into anything," she added quickly. "But maybe we could try dating again? Start fresh." Thomas reached across the table, taking her hand in his. "I would like nothing more," he said softly. "But are you sure? I don't want you to feel pressured because of our living arrangement or because of Emma." "I'm sure," Claire replied. "I wouldn't suggest it otherwise. But Thomas, we'd need to take it slow. One step at a time." "Whatever pace you're comfortable with," he agreed immediately. "I've waited this long, I can be patient." Claire smiled, squeezing his hand. "So, would you like to have dinner with me? Just the two of us?" Diane mentioned she'd be happy to watch Emma some evening. "Ms. Walker," Thomas said with mock formality, "are you asking me on a date?" "I believe I am, Mr. Reynolds," Claire replied, matching his tone. "Then I accept," Thomas said, his smile brighter than the stars above them. With great pleasure. And so, 9 months after their chance encounter at a rain-soaked bus stop, Thomas and Claire embarked on a new journey, not just as co-parents to their beautiful daughter, but as two people giving love a second chance, with eyes wide open and hearts cautiously hopeful. 6 months later, as winter turned to spring once more, the evolution of their relationship continued with careful, deliberate steps. Their first date had been almost comically formal, both of them nervous as if they were strangers instead of two people who had once known each other intimately and now shared a child. "This is ridiculous," Claire had laughed halfway through the fancy dinner Thomas had arranged. "We've been living on the same property for months, raising a daughter together, and suddenly we can't think of anything to say." The tension broken, they had fallen into easier conversation, reminiscing about their early days together before Thomas's company took off, sharing stories about Emma that the other might have missed. By the end of the night, when Thomas walked Claire to the guest house door, the awkwardness had dissolved. Their goodnight kiss was gentle but lingering, a promise of possibilities. More dates followed, dinners, movies, art exhibitions at Claire's gallery. They took things slowly, careful not to rush what was rebuilding between them. Thomas was patient, never pushing for more than Claire was ready to give. Claire was cautious, watching for any signs that Thomas might revert to his workaholic ways. But as weeks turned to months, that caution gradually gave way to trust. Thomas proved consistently that his priorities had truly changed, not just with words but with actions. He rarely missed bedtime with Emma. He attended every doctor's appointment, every milestone. He arranged his work schedule around family needs rather than the other way around. Claire, meanwhile, flourished in her career at the gallery, secure in the knowledge that Emma was well cared for by either Thomas or Diane. Her confidence grew both professionally and personally. Emma, now a toddler, was thriving with the love of both parents. She had taken her first steps in the garden between the guest house and main house, each tiny hand held by a parent. Her first word had been Dada, followed closely by Mama, delighting both of them equally. On a warm Saturday in April, nearly 15 months after their bus stop reunion, Thomas suggested they take Emma for a picnic, back to the city park near where they had first reconnected. "For old time's sake," he explained when Claire looked surprised by the specific destination. The day was perfect, sunny but not too hot. Emma, now a confident walker, toddled around the picnic blanket, bringing leaves and sticks to her parents as treasured gifts. "She's so different from the baby you were holding that day at the bus stop," Thomas observed, watching their daughter chase a butterfly a few feet away. "Sometimes I can't believe how much I've been able to be part of after all." Claire smiled, leaning against his shoulder. "She adores you. It's like you've always been there." "Thanks to you," Thomas said seriously. "You could have gotten on that bus. You could have kept me at arm's length, just let me send child support checks. But you gave me the chance to be her dad. Really be her dad." "You earned it," Claire replied. "Every day since then, you've proven that letting you into our lives was the right choice." Thomas took her hand, his expression suddenly nervous. "Speaking of choices," he began, then paused as Emma ran back to them, dropping a small rock in Claire's lap. "Thank you, sweet girl," Claire said, examining the rock with exaggerated interest. "It's beautiful." Emma beamed, then spotted another treasure a few feet away and darted off again. "You were saying?" Claire prompted, turning back to Thomas. He took a deep breath. "I've been thinking a lot lately, about us, about the future. About how different my life would be if my tire hadn't gone flat that day, if I'd driven past that bus stop without seeing you." Claire squeezed his hand. "But you did see us." "Yes," Thomas agreed. "And everything changed. I changed." He shifted to face her more directly. "Claire, this past year has been the happiest of my life. Being Emma's father, rebuilding what we lost. It's more valuable than anything I've ever achieved in business." Claire felt her heart begin to race, sensing where this conversation was heading. "I know we've taken things slowly," Thomas continued, "and I've tried to be patient, to give you all the time and space you needed to trust me again." "You have," Claire assured him. "And I do trust you, Thomas. Completely." Relief washed over his face. "That means everything to me." He reached into his pocket. "Because I wanted to ask you something today in this place that changed our lives." From his pocket he withdrew a small velvet box. Claire's breath caught. "It's not what you think," Thomas said quickly, seeing her expression. "Or maybe it is, partly. But it's not just a ring." He opened the box to reveal a beautiful but modest diamond ring, nothing like the flashy jewelry he might have chosen in his previous life, nestled beside a small gold key. "The ring is a promise," Thomas explained. That I will always put you and Emma first. That I want to build a life with you, a family, officially this time. He took the key from the box. And this is an option, not an obligation. A key to what? Claire asked, her voice barely above a whisper. To the main house, Thomas said. If you want it. Or to a new house altogether, one we choose together. Or you can keep it as a spare key to the guest house if you're not ready for more. It's your choice, Claire. No pressure, no expectations. Claire looked from the key to the ring, tears filling her eyes. Thomas? Before she could continue, Emma ran back to them, throwing herself into Thomas's lap with a giggle. Both parents automatically reached out to steady her, their hands meeting over their daughter's back. I believe in second chances now, Thomas said softly, looking from Emma to Claire. Because the universe gave me one that rainy day at the bus stop. But it's up to you what happens next. Claire was quiet for a long moment, one hand still on Emma's back, the other hovering over the open ring box. When we met again that day, she finally said, I was so sure I knew who you were, a billionaire who had chosen ambition over love, who wouldn't have time for a child, who would throw money at us and consider his obligation fulfilled. Thomas winced but didn't interrupt. I was wrong, Claire continued. The man I've come to know this past year is the man I always believed you could be. Successful, yes, but also kind. Present. Devoted. She picked up the ring, examining it in the sunlight. It's beautiful. Simple but elegant. Nothing flashy or over the top. Like our love, Thomas suggested. Strong without needing to show off. Claire smiled at that. Yes. She looked at the key. And this? This is what really tells me how much you've changed. The old Thomas would have assumed I'd move into the main house, that I'd want his grand lifestyle. And the new Thomas? He asked. Gives me choices, Claire replied. Respects my independence. She closed her hand around both the ring and the key. Yes. Thomas blinked. Yes to? To all of it, Claire clarified. To being a family, officially. To moving forward together. She leaned in, kissing him softly. I love you, Thomas. I think I never really stopped. I love you too, Thomas replied, his voice thick with emotion. Both of you more than anything. Emma, sensing the importance of the moment, threw her arms around both their necks, bringing their faces close together. Family hug, she declared in her toddler voice, one of her newest phrases. Thomas and Claire laughed, embracing their daughter between them as they shared another kiss over her curly head. So, which key are you choosing? Thomas asked as they broke apart. Guest house, main house, new house? Claire considered for a moment. For now, the main house, she decided. We've already made so many memories on the property. Emma loves the garden. And it makes sense for us to be under one roof if we're going to be a proper family. Thomas's smile could have lit up the entire park. Are you sure? It's a big change. I'm sure, Claire replied firmly. But I reserve the right to redecorate. That place could use a woman's touch, and some childproofing. Whatever you want, Thomas agreed immediately. It's your home too now. Or it will be once we make it official. Claire slipped the ring onto her finger where it fit perfectly. When did you measure my ring size? I didn't, Thomas admitted. I still had the ring I bought for you 2 years ago before everything fell apart. I kept it all this time, hoping I'd get the chance to give it to you someday. You saved it? Claire asked, surprised. Even during those 2 years when we weren't in contact? Thomas nodded. I couldn't let it go. Deep down, I think I always knew we weren't finished. Emma, growing bored with the adult conversation, wriggled free from their embrace and returned to her exploration of the park. Watch how far she goes, Claire cautioned as their daughter toddled a few feet away. Always, Thomas promised, and Claire knew he meant much more than just at this moment. They sat together on the blanket, Claire's head resting on Thomas's shoulder, his arm around her waist, both watching their daughter discover the world with wonder in her eyes. You know, Claire said after a comfortable silence, that bus never came. Thomas looked confused. What bus? The day we met again, Claire explained. At the bus stop. I must have just missed one and the next wasn't due for almost an hour. If you hadn't stopped because of your flat tire. We would have missed each other, Thomas finished, the realization sending a chill through him despite the warm day. Fate has a funny way of working out, Claire said softly. Thomas pulled her closer. I'm just grateful it worked in our favor. They sealed that gratitude with another kiss, this one deeper and full of promise for their future together. A future that had seemed impossible 15 months ago but now stretched before them, as bright and full of possibility as their daughter's smile. 1 year later, the garden of the Reynolds estate was transformed. White chairs lined a flower-strewn aisle, a simple arch of roses stood at its end, and fairy lights twinkled in the trees, waiting for dusk to showcase their magic. In the main house, now thoroughly child-proofed and redecorated to reflect both Thomas and Claire's tastes, Claire stood in what had become their bedroom, staring at her reflection in the full-length mirror. Her wedding dress was elegant but understated, an ivory sheath with delicate lace detailing that hugged her figure before flowing gently to the floor. Her hair was swept up, a few tendrils framing her face. "You look beautiful, Mom," said her sister Megan, adjusting the simple veil. "Thomas won't know what hit him." Claire smiled nervously. "It's silly to have butterflies, isn't it? We've been living together for a year. We have a child. This is just making it official." "It's not silly at all," Megan assured her. "It's a big day no matter how long you've been together." A knock at the door announced the arrival of another important member of the wedding party. Diane entered, holding the hand of a beautifully dressed 2.5-year-old Emma, who immediately broke free and ran to her mother. "Mama pretty?" Emma declared, reaching up with small hands. Claire knelt carefully, mindful of her dress. "Thank you, sweet girl. You look pretty too." Emma twirled to show off her flower girl dress, a miniature version of Claire's in style. "I throw flowers," she reminded everyone importantly. "That's right," Claire agreed. "You have a very important job today." "With Daddy?" Emma added. "Daddy said I help him." Over the past year, Emma had blossomed into a bright, chatty toddler with Thomas's confidence and Claire's artistic sensibility. She divided her time between playing with paints in Claire's home studio and working at the small desk Thomas had set up for her in his home office. "Speaking of Daddy," Megan said, checking her watch, "it's almost time. Are you ready?" Claire took a deep breath, looking once more in the mirror. "Yes," she said with certainty. "More than ready." In another part of the house, Thomas adjusted his tie for the 5th time, earning an amused look from his best man, his oldest friend from college. "Relax," James advised. "You look fine. And Claire isn't marrying you for your tie-tying skills anyway." "I know," Thomas said, running a hand through his hair. "I just want everything to be perfect for her." "Trust me, it already is," James replied. "The garden looks amazing, the weather is cooperating, and most importantly, she loves you. What more could you want?" Thomas smiled, thinking of the journey that had brought them to this day. "Nothing. I have everything I need." A small knock on the door announced the arrival of the youngest member of the wedding party. Emma ran in, followed by Diane. "Daddy? Time for wedding," she announced, throwing her arms around his legs. Thomas picked her up, careful not to wrinkle her dress. "You're right, Princess. Are you ready to help me wait for Mama at the altar?" Emma nodded solemnly. "I practice," she assured him. "She's been dropping flower petals all over the house for weeks," Diane confirmed with a laugh. "I think she's more than ready." Thomas kissed his daughter's cheek. "Then let's go get married, shall we?" The ceremony was simple but meaningful, with only their closest friends and family in attendance. Thomas stood under the rose arch, Emma holding his hand, as the string quartet began playing the bridal march. When Claire appeared at the end of the aisle on her brother's arm, Thomas felt his breath catch. She was radiant, her smile as bright as the day they had reconnected at that fateful bus stop. Emma, spotting her mother, began enthusiastically dropping rose petals, to the delight of the guests. Claire laughed, the sound carrying across the garden like music. As she reached Thomas, he took her hands in his. "You are so beautiful," he whispered. "So are you," she replied with a smile. The officiant began the ceremony, speaking of love and commitment, of second chances and new beginnings. Thomas and Claire had written their own vows, simple promises to each other and to Emma. "Claire," Thomas began when it was his turn, "2 years ago, a flat tire changed my life. What seemed like bad luck turned out to be the greatest blessing I could have imagined. It led me back to you and to our daughter." He looked down at Emma, who was now sitting quietly on a small chair beside them, watching with wide eyes. "I promise to never again lose sight of what truly matters," Thomas continued. "To be present, not just physically but emotionally, for you and for Emma every day. To remember that all the success in the world means nothing without family to share it with." Claire wiped away a tear before beginning her own vows. "Thomas, when we met again that rainy day, I thought I knew exactly who you were and what our future would hold. I was prepared to keep you at a distance for Emma's sake." She smiled. "I've never been so happy to be wrong." She squeezed his hands. "I promise to trust in the man you've become, to build our family together with love and patience, and to remember that sometimes the most unexpected turns in the road lead exactly where we're meant to be. They exchanged rings, simple platinum bands that matched the engagement ring Thomas had given Claire in the park a year before. By the power vested in me, the officiant concluded, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride. Thomas pulled Claire close, kissing her tenderly as their guests applauded. Emma, not wanting to be left out, hugged their legs, making everyone laugh. Thomas picked her up, including her in their embrace. We're officially a family now, he told his daughter. Always family, Emma corrected with the wisdom of a child. Even before. Claire and Thomas exchanged a look over their daughter's head, both recognizing the truth in her simple statement. They had been a family from the moment Thomas saw Claire at that bus stop, holding the daughter he never knew he had. The wedding was just a celebration of what had already been built, one day at a time, with love and patience. The reception was held on the expansive lawn, with fairy lights now twinkling in the twilight. After dinner and toasts, Thomas led Claire to the dance floor for their first dance as husband and wife. Happy? He asked as they swayed to the music. Completely, Claire replied, resting her head on his shoulder. Though I still sometimes feel like I'm dreaming. 2 years ago, I was struggling to pay rent, raising Emma alone, wondering how I'd make ends meet. And now? Thomas prompted. Claire smiled up at him. Now I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. We all are. As the song ended, a small figure darted onto the dance floor. My turn. Emma insisted, holding up her arms to her father. Thomas laughed, lifting her up for an impromptu dance. Claire watched them, her heart full to bursting with love for them both. Later, as the party continued around them, Thomas and Claire found a quiet moment alone, standing at the edge of the garden overlooking the koi pond where they had shared so many important conversations. I have something for you, Thomas said, pulling a small box from his pocket. A wedding gift. Claire opened it to find a delicate gold locket. Inside was a tiny photo of Emma on one side and on the other, a picture of the three of them, taken during a family photo session a few months earlier. It's beautiful, Claire said, touching it gently. Thomas fastened it around her neck. To remind you that no matter what happens, no matter where life takes us, we'll always be connected. The three of us. Claire turned to face him, wrapping her arms around his neck. I don't need reminding, she said softly. But I love it anyway. Thank you. They kissed beneath the stars, the sounds of their wedding celebration a gentle backdrop to this private moment. Mrs. Reynolds, Thomas murmured against her lips. I like the sound of that. So do I, Claire agreed. Though professionally I'm keeping Walker. Hope that's okay. Whatever makes you happy, Thomas said sincerely. That's all I want for you. For both of you. Claire smiled. You know what makes me happiest? Seeing you with Emma. Watching you be the father I always hoped she would have. It's the most important job I'll ever have, Thomas replied. CO doesn't compare. A small voice interrupted them. Mommy? Daddy? Emma had escaped her aunt's watchful eye and found them by the pond. What is it, sweetheart? Claire asked, kneeling to her daughter's level. Are we going home now? Emma asked, rubbing her eyes sleepily. Thomas picked her up, cradling her against his shoulder. We are home, princess. This is our home. Always. Over Emma's head, he met Claire's eyes, seeing in them the same contentment he felt in his own heart. From a chance meeting at a bus stop to this perfect moment, their journey had come full circle. As they walked back to the reception, Emma now nearly asleep against Thomas's shoulder, Claire slipped her hand into his free one. Together they rejoined their celebration, surrounded by love and the promise of all the days to come, days they would face as they had faced the past 2 years, side by side, one step at a time, a family complete. The sound of children's laughter echoed through the gardens of the Reynolds estate on a bright summer morning. Emma, now 7 years old with her father's dark hair and her mother's determined spirit, was chasing her 3-year-old brother James around the koi pond while their parents watched from the terrace. Careful near the water. Claire called, her hand instinctively moving to her rounded belly where their third child, a girl according to the ultrasound, was growing steadily. Thomas slipped his arm around his wife's shoulders. They're fine. Emma's watching out for him just like she always does. I know, Claire admitted with a smile. It's just habit at this point. The past 5 years had brought changes neither could have imagined when they stood in the rain at that bus stop. Thomas's company had continued to thrive, though he now worked primarily from home and had elevated his trusted executive team to handle much of the day-to-day operations. His priorities remained clear: family first, business second. Claire had eventually opened her own gallery in the city, focusing on undiscovered artists from disadvantaged backgrounds. Her reputation in the art world had grown steadily, but like Thomas, she had structured her career around family life, working 3 days a week and bringing the children to the gallery regularly to instill in them an appreciation for art. "Did you sign those school papers for Emma?" Claire asked, leaning into Thomas's embrace. "This morning," he confirmed. "I still can't believe she's starting second grade next month. It feels like yesterday she was that tiny baby in your arms at the bus stop." Claire smiled, remembering. "That day seems like both forever ago and just yesterday. So much has changed." "For the better," Thomas added, his hand gently caressing her belly. Their lives had found a rhythm neither had thought possible during those tentative early days of co-parenting. The guest house where Claire and Emma had first stayed was now a dedicated playhouse for the children, with art supplies, books, and toys filling the spaces where Claire had once nervously planned their escape route if things didn't work out. Diane was still part of their family, though now she primarily cared for James while Emma was at school, and helped Claire prepare for the new baby's arrival. She had become more than just a nanny. She was the children's honorary grandmother, loving them fiercely and spoiling them appropriately. "Dad, Mom, look what I found," Emma called, running toward them with something clutched carefully in her hands. James toddled behind her, trying to keep up on his shorter legs. As they reached the terrace, Emma opened her hands to reveal a tiny frog. "Can I keep him, please? I'll take good care of him." Thomas knelt to examine the creature. "He's a wild animal. He probably has a family of his own near the pond." Emma's face fell slightly, but she nodded with understanding. "Like how you found me and Mom. And now we're a family?" Thomas and Claire exchanged surprised looks. "What do you mean, sweetie?" Claire asked gently. Emma shrugged. "Aunt Megan told me the story. About how you and Dad found each other at the bus stop when I was a baby, and you didn't think you'd be a family but then you became one. It's my favorite story." Thomas smiled, touched by his daughter's perspective. "That is a good story, isn't it? But a little different from the frog. Your mom and I always loved each other even when we were apart. We just had to find our way back to each other. With my help," Emma added confidently. "Definitely with your help," Claire agreed, ruffling her daughter's hair. "You were the most important part." James, feeling left out, tugged on his father's pant leg. "Up, Daddy, up." Thomas obliged, lifting his son into his arms. "What do you say we all help Emma return the frog to his home, and then have some ice cream?" "Ice cream," James cheered, while Emma carefully cradled her amphibian discovery. As they walked back toward the pond, Thomas took Claire's hand. "Happy?" he asked quietly, an echo of the question he had asked her on their wedding day. "More than I ever thought possible," she replied honestly. "You?" Thomas looked at their children, Emma solemnly explaining to the frog where his home was, James watching with wide-eyed fascination, then back at his wife, radiant in the sunlight. "I have everything I could ever want," he said simply. "And it all started with a flat tire and a missed bus." Claire squeezed his hand. "Some accidents turn out to be miracles in disguise." As Emma gently released the frog back into the pond, the family stood together at the water's edge, reflections shimmering on the surface. A complete picture that had once seemed impossible but now was their beautiful reality. Life had come full circle, from a chance meeting in the rain to this sun-drenched moment of ordinary family happiness. Whatever challenges came next, Thomas and Claire would face them as they had faced everything since that day at the bus stop. Together, one step at a time, with love lighting the way forward.